Hello and welcome along to another episode of the Tackling Sport podcast. It's your host Daniel Hussey, joined as always by my brother Sean. Sean, welcome along.
How's it going, Dan?
Yeah, interesting enough week in the sporting sense, Sean. I think we'll be starting with Irish athletics. It was great to see those scenes in Munich, especially given the fact that RT, I know the 100-meter final went to RT News now, but it was great to see that it was picked up. Majority of the races were really on RT, which is brilliant. And I know the Shamrock Rovers game was on RT as well. So I think this still speaks volumes for terrestrial television still, even though it's the year 2022,
Yeah, and obviously the whole thing, we've heard the campaign, the Can't See, Can't Be campaign has been targeted around women's sport. But I think it's the same for, if you look at Irish athletics, and even, to have someone in a 100-meter final and just, to break the Irish record in that final. And it just is an example for everyone else out there. And again, kudos to RTE and for having it, for showing it, for people to get into watch athletics, because I think athletics is probably one of those sports in Ireland where there's a number of them which are outside the big three, of rugby, Gaelic games and soccer. So a lot of those sports like cricket, like athletics, fall under, probably they feel like they're probably undersold, and they don't get the media attention it probably deserves, and it takes a night and a couple of days like we've had in Munich to grab the nation's attention. We see it in the couple of weeks when the Olympics are on and the Paralympics, the European Championships and the World Games or whatever. So it's been a brilliant week for Irish athletics, and it's the best thing about it from Irish athletics point of view is that it's been on TV and it's grabbed the nation's attention, and it hasn't just passed everyone by, and it's a credit to the athletes.
Yeah, we had this discussion probably this time last year, maybe, around the coverage of Irish athletics, and the League of Ireland was kind of into one episode. If you search on your podcast platforms, you'll get that back. But just to go through the stats, really, Olatunde became the first Irishman in a European and world 100-meter final, and he ended up finishing in sixth place with a new national record of 10:17. So he's been quoted afterwards saying he wants to go under 10 seconds, which would be absolutely extraordinary. So I think the best thing about that is he's only 20 years of age as well. And then literally last night we had Adeleke got in contention for literally a European medal. She's had like form at 200 meters, so she used her sprint. I thought it was beautifully covered by Greg Allen, who most people know him for golf reporting as opposed to anything else, but he has been doing athletics commentary on RT for the last couple of years. Watch it back, you'll find it on RT's Twitter pages. It was brilliantly called, but she used her starting kick, went for home, and she only got the dying strides, went from maybe third to fifth, but she just about hung on for fifth, a national record of 50.53, and she's only 19, so the future's bright. And I think the best thing about Olatunde and Adeleke was their two interviews as well. I don't know where we get these athletes that compete at Olympic and world and European level in athletics and rowing and others, but they're just so endearing, and it's just, I think it's because we're used to maybe the professional footballers interviews, and then maybe the GA players have that personality, but they're not allowed to show because they don't want to give too much away. Whereas I think these athletes want coverage for themselves, and you see them tweeting out, thank you for the support and all. So I think that's massive, and there's now stories to build on. And we always spoke about after the last Olympics that we need to build on these stories. So you're not seeing these athletes once every 3 or 4 years, and I think it was beautifully covered. And again, I know Olatunde's was on RT News now, but it's still getting the coverage it deserves. And the reaction on social media was extraordinary. I have to say, I think someone close to Irish athletics saying like the Irish athletic supporters are amazing. So I think it goes out saying that support is incredible. So really good couple of days in Munich, and there's been a lot of host of other good Irish athletes there as well. So almost bonus, because I don't think they were expected to do as well as they did. So they've exceeded expectations. So it's brilliant to see.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it there, Dan, about these athletes almost have to sell themselves as well for sponsorship, for any opportunities that come through it. Athletics, being an athlete that competes in most of the most of the Olympic sports, it can be a really difficult process. It can be kind of a long, difficult road where you're doing all the unseen training. You might have to, say, for example, go on a training camp to a warm weather training camp, which costs a lot of money. So that's where the athletes obviously get looked after by Sport Ireland and by Irish Athletics, but that's where they need sponsorship and when they come out and tell their stories and they show the emotion, I think it only helps them. And as you mentioned, these athletes want coverage, they want to be recognised, and I think their performances in the week and their interviews, I think you're right, that the emotion of Olatunde seeing that he broke the national record and draped in the tricolour was a brilliant sight, and hopefully we'll see that in a couple of years now, because it's only a couple of years. It's only the Olympics is next year, I think.
2 years.
2 years. Sorry, 2 years.
Paris. This time 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see that happen in Paris.
Yeah, and luckily I think she's on the 15 grand grant. I'm not sure Olatunde. I was trying to find that earlier. But yeah, that's brilliant. I think 40,000 is the most. We spoke with Jerry Kieran actually on the grants, and they're very interested to see where we're at in terms of Paris grants, etc. But yeah, good couple of years, and I know this is at European level, and it's a big step up to world level. But I think it's brilliant. Yeah, and shout out to the two of them, and we covered them well there on our Instagram pages, and you even see the reactions. I think people love watching. It was surreal seeing particularly in the 100 meters, seeing an Irish sprinter competing there. It's extraordinary, and listen, be seen, be heard, and it kind of maybe might inspire someone else to pick it up, and then the baton will be passed over. So yeah, brilliant stuff on the Irish athletics front. If you are tuning in or listening on the podcast, do check out the description. That'll be available Friday morning, where you'll see the topics that we're covering, and the timestamps there available as well. If you want to go to the timestamps, we're covering a bit, which you'll see in the headings there at the moment. I wanted to touch on a little bit on LIV Golf, Sean, briefly before we enter the football. But talking about this, we wanted to kind of cover something else aside from the athletics and football. There's not too much happening in the golfing world. I understand it's the FedEx Cup playoffs, and Zalatoris got his first win last week, which is brilliant, because it's a pretty poor tournament. I thought pretty boring overall until maybe those playoff holes. With LIV Golf, Tiger Woods has been summoned in to save the day. Interesting withdrawal from Cam Smith. I presume he kind of saw that coming, and it would just be way too awkward if he was asked to attend that meeting or whatever. He wanted to rest up for the final playoff event. But your thoughts? I think like people were starting to not come with LIV Golf, but accept it. But I think the way a lot of the LIV golfers wanted to be playing the playoffs, even though they want to play less golf, and then even the contradiction in Cam Smith wanted to play less golf, go for the money, yet he's still playing the PGA Tour playoffs. I don't think it was a great move, and I think if they had it back, they would maybe decide not to play these playoff games, go out on their own completely, because I think they might have lost a small bit of support of the public. If you leave the Saudi Arabia thing aside, which it's a hard thing to do, but I know in America they definitely haven't moved on from that it's a PGA Tour versus LIV Golf thing. I think they've lost a small bit of respect from the public, and even Patrick Reed going, who's he suing? Brandel, isn't he? Suing him for, I'm not sure. I might find out the figure there when you're talking, Sean. But yeah, there's a lot going on. Sum up where you think LIV Golf is at, because I think they've definitely slipped up in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think everyone knows that LIV Golf's biggest, the people if they could get the likes of the Rory McIlroys, Tiger Woods, Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa's on board, I think they would have cracked the code. And the thing is, Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods in particular, and Justin Thomas have been so outspoken. Well, we haven't really heard too much from Tiger, but I think his actions this week of attending that meeting, I'm sure will be big part of that. But we've heard from Rory, we've heard from Justin Thomas. There's been bits from the likes of Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth and those guys, and they were always going to be the big challenge for LIV Golf to overcome. I think where LIV Golf at the moment, it's at the stage where it's almost like, well, they have a tour, and it's like, let's see where you get with it, let's see how far you go, and let's see how it runs. I think the PGA Tour has an awful lot to do. I think they've decided to throw more money at the game and promise more money to the professional golfers, which is, much of a muchness. And they are doing, in fairness, PGA Tour do a lot of good works with their kind of sister networks, and the Latin American Tour, and they do obviously the Web.com Tour and things like that and stuff. But LIV Golf has just kind of come in and changed all that. And the big one was could they get a lot of the college golfers out and get them in? Now they have got a couple of highly rated golfers in, but I definitely think if they get Cam Smith, the Open champion, one of the best golfers in the world, the Players champion, that throws the cat amongst the pigeons slightly. But I still think the likes of Rory and Tiger and Justin Thomas still being so anti-LIV, is the PGA Tour's biggest asset in this. But also, if you look at LIV at the moment, with there's a couple of people that I don't think I've ever seen someone who was so well respected, so well liked, particularly on this island, go so downhill so quickly in terms of Graham McDowell. Everywhere you go, when people talk about LIV Golf, it's not that he's the face of it, but he's like the laughing stock of it, with that press conference he did at the Centurion Golf Club. Considering he's the world number, I think he's close to the world number 400 now. He was 384. Or someone who hasn't played his best golf for a number of years, for a new breakaway golf tour to have him as one of the most well-known faces of its marketing campaign over the last 2 months just shows you kind of where LIV are at. But as I said, I don't think anyone has come out of something as worse in sporting terms for a long time than Graham McDowell, because I think he's probably damaged goods at the moment. I know he got a bit of support at the JP McManus, and I think people when they went there, were there to just watch good golf and to be there to enjoy themselves and have an occasion after COVID and things like that. But I think Graham McDowell now, he's damaged goods at this stage, and he's come across. Obviously, he's made a lot of money off, and he's the kind of the ideal person that suits. But as I said, I don't think someone who was so well liked and so well respected in Irish sport has gone downhill as quick.
Patrick Reed has filed a $750 million defamation lawsuit against Golf Channel and Brandel. So I saw a great tweet going like the most unlikable sporting, well, at least golfers, it's even become more unlikable. But yeah, it'll be interesting how that plays out. Be interesting how golf plays out. It could potentially mean that, if it stays the way it is in terms of no more players moving from PGA Tour to LIV Golf, that you're looking at maybe the majors becoming a little bit bigger, which is no bad thing in some ways. And I think there's enough good players to keep the interest in the PGA Tour. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how it plays out. I think post PGA Tour playoffs, we may see one or two more defectors. So yeah. Any final thoughts on LIV Golf before we move on there? I think that's pretty much it from
no.
I want to get that Patrick Reed thing in.
Yeah, the majors are the big one because they're not run by the PGA Tour. Obviously, it's well known. They're four kind of separate entities. Also, I think the World Golf Rankings, if the World Golf Rankings accept LIV, I think that's the big game changer as well. I think that will free up a few people to to move. It'll just be interesting to see how LIV survive for the. It's not there to make money. It's not there to get bums on seats or get people through the gate, but it will just be interesting to see. And also, if I was involved in LIV, and obviously Greg Norman being Australians involved in LIV, if you can get high class golf to Australia, obviously it's always been somewhere that's been deprived of a lot of big tournaments just through its nature of being, halfway across the world for Americans or whatever. If they can get top class golf into Australia, I think they could win that portion of the sports market over. And again, if you can get top quality golf into the Asian countries like Korea, Japan and China and places like that where golf is so big, I think that will go a long way to their overall success. So I think that's kind of where they're at the moment. I don't think they're going to crack the UK market at the moment. I know they're going to have a few events there. And America seems to be a real storm over it. But I think Australia, it'll be something to watch out for, especially now if they get Cam Smith and there's talks of Mark Leishman and a few others. That'd be an interesting one to where they go.
Yeah, I think there's a small bit of PGA Tour falling asleep at the wheel a bit. I know they kind of were getting there, like the Scottish Open was good this year. The fact that there was a co-sanctioned event with the now DP World Tour that was the European Tour. So I think maybe a small bit of more of that maybe years ago might have worked out better.
Absolutely. And listen, like if there was a LIV Tour event in the K Club or in Lahinch, I don't think people are going to go out of curiosity to see top quality golf.
Doonbeg is going to host one next year. That's the talk. So
absolutely, and I think people will go, and they're having a great weekend watching. Maybe not the best golfers in the world, but some of the best, certainly in Cam Smith, one of them. So if they can, like I said, they can crack those couple of markets, that'll really give them a foothold. And the two big ones are the majors, and if they get granted world ranking points.
Yeah, moving on to the League of Ireland and Europe. Shamrock Rovers were in action tonight. I didn't catch any of the highlights now. I saw the scoreline myself. Your thoughts on if you caught much of it, but just the overall, I suppose, a disappointing enough result. Maybe not necessarily the defeat, but losing 4-0. Probably all hopes of Europa League group stage, it's gone, but it will still be a Europa Conference League group stage, and I think there's probably more important games to come, albeit very disappointing defeat.
Yeah, look, again, the thing that will annoy them is that it's kind of killed off the second leg. Kind of happened a bit in the Ludogorets game, conceding that late goal in the first leg against Ludogorets, and I know they had a great performance in Tala in the second leg, but they left themselves too much to do, and again, the second leg is kind of pointless at this stage. And I know Stephen Bradley will want the side to go out and try and win the game. But the thing with Rovers is they just needed to get any form of European football, group stage European football. They were too good a side for a number of years not to get it. They have a lot of high quality players. They have a big squad, so I think that overall they'll be delighted with it. They'll just be disappointed in the manner of it. I just saw I think I saw the fourth goal there in injury time, and it's a volley from outside the box and things like that. 3-0 and 3-0 to 4-0 is, the game has certainly gone then. So it's disappointing, but they'll have Europa Conference League football, so at least that's something to look forward to in Tala.
Do you reckon there's a chance they might get caught in the league table? Because I'm just looking at it here now. They're 4 points with a game in hand, but I guess that European run could potentially cost them a title, which will be, the Champions League playoff, or getting into Champions League qualification for next year. They can't take their eye off the ball, and it's kind of coming in towards the end of the season. The group stage definitely comes at a poor time for League of Ireland side. So I'll share the table there while you're talking if you want to.
Yeah, look, it's been a weird kind of summer of League of Ireland football. Obviously, there's the mid-season break for a couple of weeks, but with all this aggro with sides and the difficulty sides have had with traveling around Europe and trying to be able to play games. Rovers had a spell there, I think it was in June, I think they only played a handful of league games. So that's just the nature of it when European football like this kicks into gear now. I think with Rovers' squad, you'd still really fancy them to win the league. I don't think that'll be something that they'll want to keep going and make sure they secured and give themselves a good tilt at the Conference League group stages. As you say, it doesn't come at the best time. But no, I think that there's probably very little doubt that I think Rovers won't win the league. But it's certainly something now we might see in the second leg with it being 4-0. You might just see Stephen Bradley rest and rotate, and he has that luxury with just the quality of the squad he has.
Yeah, and any final kind of pointers on the table this year in terms of the top or bottom, and any team that surprised you? I guess Dundalk getting back in form is brilliant, but as you mentioned, Rovers are probably, with that squad they have, are probably just too good. And look, it may be no bad thing. It's not good for League of Ireland to have one team dominating, but if they can progress in Europe over 2 or 3 seasons and get better and better, maybe in the long run it could work out.
I think probably the disappointing is the lack of kind of jeopardy at the bottom of the table. UCD and Finn Harps are way could have drifted at the bottom, and Ollie Horgan's been doing an amazing job up with Finn Harps for a number of years, and it just looks like this year is probably one step too far. And UCD always have that problem of losing their best players, and also being a little bit too good for the first division and not good enough for the Premier Division. So it's one of them. I think the one probably a lot of people will be drawn to is Shelbourne. I think the key for Shelbourne this year would have been Damien Duff, just to have a solid first season, lay a few foundations. They've got a lot of good young players in there. I know Joey O'Brien is in with Damien Duff. There seems to be a real good feel-good factor around Tolka Park, obviously with the campaign to save it. I think Shells are kind of happy, for Shells fans rather. And then obviously you have to give credit to, I know Sligo and St. Pat's there are in that battle for the final European spot there. but both sides have had brilliant runs in Europe. Again, be a little bit disappointed that they didn't quite go further. But like I said, for Sligo to have that victory over Motherwell in the showgrounds, with the sun shining, sometimes as a fan, if you're a fan of any sports team, sometimes it's the moments that beat the overall, the consistency of winning or something. It's just those moments that you'll remember, and I'm sure those Sligo fans, and even to have the second leg, I know against the FC Viking, the Norwegian crowd, who, as again, the second leg was a non-contest because of the result in the first, but they still had that night in the showgrounds. And I think that sometimes, as a League of Ireland season, when Sligo Rovers reflect at the end of the season, I think they'll see it in two parts: that had a really good European campaign, and then it all depends on where they finish, and between them and Pats for that fourth place.
Yeah, we'll move on to the Premier League and the ongoing saga. I have to say, it's like I me, sometimes I don't like overall the hype. I don't like the idea of how we're so invested in the Premier League. I really don't, and even more so an English club over there as well. But I have to say, the Premier League has been unbelievable the first 2 weeks. It really has. It's exceeded high expectations. There's probably 7 or 8 storyline. I think nearly every club has something going on where it's just. I'll go through the whole list in a minute. But for you, where you're kind of at with the Premier League 2 weeks in, it's already feeling like a few crises are happening in United, less so Liverpool, but yeah, City top of the league and looking like, just to give things with odds, they were like, I think 1.7, 1.8, they're now 1.4. Like it's inconceivable now they're going to lose the title, and we're only 2 games in, which is incredible. But that's what the people, very intelligent people, are saying to us. So.
Well, obviously, as a nation, I think we're even the most ardent League of Ireland fans, we're all drawn to just the nature of English football, the size, with the history of our young Irish players going over to play in England, going back from the 50s. You look at John Giles going over. English football and has always kind of been the place for Irish footballers to make their mark. So when you see clubs like Man United and you see clubs like Leeds, Liverpool, Arsenal, and you just look at the history of Irish players going over and representing those clubs, there's always going to be that natural kind of draw to it. Then coupled with the fact that you've got Manchester United and Liverpool, obviously very well supported here, but probably 2 of the biggest clubs in the world. And they've gone on different journeys over the last 20 years, and they're both in very different places at the minute. And like everywhere you go, people are talking about Man United. Like I turned on John Giles there on News Talk, and he was talking about Ronaldo, saying he's got to go. And when you've got that, when you have a club like Manchester United, and it happens in every sport, it's happened with Kilkenny, it's happened with the Dubs now in men's Gaelic football. Now that they've lost a few All-Irelands, everyone wants to talk about them. Why aren't they winning? And obviously we've seen Manchester United under Fergie win all these titles, and now they're in a place where people can't believe it. And I think people are just talking about it because they just can't get over it. They can't understand it. And obviously Monday night's game, Manchester United Liverpool, is always bigged up to be a big game, but this is a huge game for different reasons. I mean, if Liverpool don't pick up a win, that's 3 games without a win to start the season. That means you got to be fairly faultless for the rest of it to win the league. And again, if Jurgen Klopp doesn't win the league, this is his. I think it'll be 1 title in 7 seasons, or at least 6. So there's a lot at stake on Monday night. If Ten Hag can win at Old Trafford, then it changes everything. I personally think, maybe people might say a paper over the crack, but if he can win at Old Trafford, and I always think at Old Trafford, when the manager walks towards his Stretford end down into the tunnel, I think Ten Hag will be thinking, if he could get a win there against Liverpool, and he's taking the applause, and you can imagine the roar of the Manchester United fans, also because they'll know that it will put Liverpool in a difficult position. So it's a good time to play Liverpool. It's a good time for Liverpool to play Man United. So it should be set for a really good game, but it's the one people are talking in pubs and cafes, building sites, wherever, especially now. Manchester United Liverpool will be a huge game.
Yeah, they always seem those games get bigger and bigger for a variety of reasons, and I think the best thing about this is the fact it's on Monday night, so teams will have a chance to go ahead of them. So realistically, you're looking at 18th, 19th versus 17th or 18th. So that'll be the build up, the relegation battle. Pretty exciting times. Do you have a prediction of where it's going to go? Like, I still think Liverpool are just too good with better players and better team there. And I know they're missing Núñez, but I think they'll galvanise them a little bit. And they're almost not written off, but at least that'll be the mentality going in. But I just think they'll probably have too much for United that I just don't know what way Ten Hag will go. And I'm just not being impressed with his selections the first couple of games, and not being impressed the way he let Dean Henderson go and let Kepa De Gea. There's just a lot of things that outside of how the club is a mess, leave that all aside. Ten Hag's got a lot wrong considering he's only 2 games in. So I do feel Liverpool will be far too strong for them on Monday night. But what are your kind of thoughts on where it's going to go on Monday?
Yeah, like Liverpool, they have a really good recent record in Old Trafford, their last couple of visits. But overall, they don't have the best record there. I think Liverpool should win the game. I think if you had Núñez there starting, I know people are looking at Lisandro Martinez and thinking he's small and maybe Núñez could have targeted him in the air. I'm more thinking Harry Maguire up against Núñez, and Harry Maguire, Martinez low on confidence up against this big, strong centre forward who the only thing missing from his game at the minute is that composure in front of goal. But other than that, he looks like he's got all the tools. So I think I would have loved to have seen him against them. I think that Firmino looks to be injured. So maybe they might play Jota again's injured as well. Be interesting. This is such a game for Mane. It really is. I think if you had Mane in that kind of false number 9 position he was playing the second half of last season, and Diaz and Salah, I think Liverpool could win this 3 or 4-0. I just think there's a part of me that thinks United fans, I know there's so much in the air about potential protests. I think Ten Hag needs to get a tune out of them, and I just think it might be a draw, but it wouldn't shock me if Liverpool turned them over very, very easily. It's just one of those games.
Yeah, your thoughts on Conte and Tuchel there on Sunday? I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but well, you were coming back like I was as well. But I tuned in for the last maybe 10 minutes, so I got enough content from that to keep me going for the rest of the week. But I thought it was brilliant, and I just think it's exactly what you don't really get in the Premier League usually, or at least you don't now in the I'd say Jose and Wenger are probably the last proper spot on the sideline. We were coming home from the country, and I had a mix of the Sky commentary and News Talks commentary of the games. So it's kind of mixing between the two, and you could feel the atmosphere. I love listening to a game on the radio because you can feel the atmosphere if you have a good commentator. And I think it was Stephen Doyle on News Talk was talking about Tuchel was running down the sideline and past Conte, and you could feel it bubbling. And then I think I had Sky on at the time, and they said, they're going to shake hands, and then there was a little bit of to and fro. And look, I think people love to see it. I think especially when they're not directly involved. If you're watching a game and you have a couple of teams playing, and you mightn't have a huge interest, and if you see that little bit of tension or that aggro, that it just adds to it. It gives it more life. Say if you're watching a Euros game and something like that happened, or a World Cup game in a tournament, or a Champions League night, and something like that happens and people are flicking over, just adds to it. And I think obviously the nature of Conte being at Tottenham now, there's a huge rivalry between Chelsea and Tottenham, going back historically. I really enjoyed obviously I didn't watch it live, so I saw the highlights of it, but I enjoyed listening to it. And I'm worried as an Arsenal fan about Tottenham. I just think they have, throughout that game when I was listening, all I was hearing was how poor they were, and I just thought, I just had a feeling they'd get something from the game. And that's such a, Harry Kane mentioned in his Match of the Day interview that, he misquoted and said it was a winner, and someone else, one of the pundits was talking about, that would feel like a win for Tottenham. I know they have a really poor record at Stamford Bridge, but that's a massive result for them. And the signs look good. If you're a Spurs fan, I think this is certainly the most happy you'll be about a Tottenham team, manager and recruitment for a long time. Yeah, just Yeah, just having a look at the fixtures here. So this weekend we got Spurs at home to Wolves. That's the early game. We got Palace versus Villa, Everton versus Nottingham Forest, Fulham, Brentford, Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth, Arsenal is the 5:30 game. Big game for the Gunners there, and a decent enough Super Sunday, I have to say. Leeds at home to Chelsea, and Newcastle at home to Man City, with West Ham Brighton at 2 o'clock on Sunday, because West Ham are playing in the Conference League, and United Liverpool on Monday night. Any fixtures for people to look out for on Saturday, Sean? Like for me, I think Bournemouth, Arsenal for sure, but the fact I just Premier Sports probably picked the right game there for me on the 3 o'clock, because Frank Lampard, I know I wouldn't say a big fan, but I know you're saying he probably gets it's gone the other way now. He probably gets too much of a bad time in the media, but he's under massive pressure already, isn't he? And a home to Forest side that, rode their luck against West Ham, and you'd expect everything to come out firing. But if Forest can sneak a win here, Frank Lambert's under massive pressure already, despite the good finish to last season.
Yeah, I think this is one of my games of the weekend. It was the one that kind of stood out on the list when I was looking at it a bit earlier, for a couple of reasons. The fact of your Forest off the back of a feel-good victory at the City Ground, and all the razzmatazz having the Premier League back for the first time in 23 years, and everyone knows how big a club it is, and its connection with Ireland as well. But I just think they'll feel good. They'll go to Goodison not fearing anything. It's the perfect time to play Everton. It's the middle of the afternoon. It's not on TV. The Everton Goodison Park crowd will probably be very apprehensive. They've had a difficult start to the season. Chelsea at home. No, this is a really strong Chelsea side, and a Villa away off the back of an awful performance against Bournemouth, so they were always going to be able to kick into gear. Having watched a little bit of Onana, the young midfielder they bought, he looks a seriously good player, very rangy midfielder. That tall presence, they're able to compete in both boxes. And I know he was kind of involved in their goal. I think he looks a really, really good player. It'd be interesting to see if Frank Lampard picks him in from the start. But that's a huge game and a massive game for Everton. Also, in Leicester, Southampton, two sides who haven't started the season well. Obviously, Leicester blew a couple of goal lead against Brentford in the opening day. I think this is a big game. There's a couple of games there for a couple of sides. If you scroll down, Everton, obviously Forest is a must not lose for Everton. Leicester, Southampton's a must not lose for both sides. And West Ham at home against Brighton off the back of conference action. I mean, if they lose to a really informed and a good Brighton side, then all of a sudden the high hopes of last year and the expectation just goes to a little bit of concern. And if you start the season well, it just sets you up for the rest of the season. So if Brighton can go and get a win against West Ham, that's 7 points from 9. That's a really good start, and they have a 7-point head start on West Ham. And I know West Ham had a difficult start against Man City, also a difficult start playing Forest away for a second game. But if they don't beat Brighton at home, then there'd be a few alarm bells ringing, and maybe they'll have to go back into the transfer market. Because I know they were unlucky. The new centre-half that they were bought, I think, is injured. And there's been a little bit of interest in the goalkeeping. Not Fabianski played against Forest, but they've had Areola there. So there's just a few things of concern at West Ham.
Yeah, and it's the first Europa Conference League game to not. Well, the fans are in London. Was that game on tonight? Oh, yeah, it's Thursday tonight, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know how West Ham got on. They won 3-1. 1-3-1. Jared Bowen scoring and Mikel Antonio scoring. There you go. Getting a lot of updates there.
Well, obviously, another interesting one on Everton, Dan, which I'd forgotten about, is Anthony Gordon. Chelsea put in a bid of 40 million, and I
was just going to ask you, right? So, I think when your first reaction is usually the correct reaction, right? I was sitting there watching Super Sunday, and they actually broke the news on Super Sunday, and they just go, Anthony Gordon, Chelsea made a bid for 40 million. I've seen him play. He's decent. Don't get me wrong. It's not saying he's not a good player, but I was shocked, absolutely shocked. And I think Carragher knows the reaction he'd get absolutely battered on social media if he said that. So he kind of went with, well, Everton wants that. But I think they might sell him if they get 50 or 60 million. I think Chelsea might pay. Sorry, I was meant to ask you that on Anthony Gordon.
Well, I was having this discussion with a Toffee fan there the other day, and a few people were saying, now they're kind of interested in Ben Brereton Diaz, the Chilean striker at Blackburn. 40 million for Anthony Gordon. I think that the idea of selling him to Chelsea, especially off the back of Ross Barkley gone there, if they sell him and Everton have a really bad season, the fans will lose any. And the only bit of respect they have for the team is Anthony Gordon. They love him. He's a local lad. He's got the number 10 jersey now. I think if it goes south and he does move on this summer and we get to January and Everton are in a relegation battle, well, I think it's going to be mayhem at Goodison Park. Obviously, they're only a couple of years away from moving into the new stadium, just about stayed up last year. If they lose Gordon and they don't replace him adequately, then you don't know. And you also look, the Gareth Bale transfer is the biggest example to clubs. They sold Gareth Bale for 80 million. You think you're going to get a couple of great replacements, and Tottenham spent it all on Soldado. There was Paulinho, and I think Lamela, and I think Christian Eriksen is probably the only one who gave Tottenham real value for money. So when clubs know you've sold a player for big money, then they know they can get more money out of you. So it's that decision for Everton to make. I'm sure Frank Lampard won't want him to go. I think they'll keep on to him. They'll keep hold of him. But then also, probably the biggest shock of the day, Dan, I don't know if you've seen it, but apparently Nottingham Forest, according to, I think it was Fabrizio Romano on Twitter, said Nottingham Forest had a bid accepted for Wolves.
Yeah, Morgan Gibbs White. Yeah.
Of over 40 million, which, like, I watched the guy play. I think he's a good player. Like, one of those players that's in around the England 21s in the past and will be a decent Premier League player. But that actually stopped me in my tracks there when I saw that was over 40 million. Like, this is a player last year. He was on loan at Sheffield United, and he did all right at Sheffield United, but he did all right. It's the same as Ryan Brewster, who's there and did all right and cost 20 million for Sheffield United. I just think Forest are going down the wrong road slightly, and Wolves to get 45 million for an academy graduate who's played very little Premier League football at their club is exceptional business.
Yeah, I was talking to a Wolves fan about it, and you're basically selling him and getting your Nunes in, and it's a small bit more Nunes. I know there's more salary and all involved, but I think that's pretty decent because I was a tad worried for Wolves, and just you're kind of. I know getting rid of Connor Cody is probably the right call, but it's just like you're selling a lot of the soul there. But in fairness, that Morgan Gibbs White deal. I think it is 25 million initially, but it will rise to 40. I was reported initially as 35 million, but it's still, regardless. Someone put a list of all the players you can get, who have been bought this summer for less money. The likes of Zinchenko. It went all the way down to Haller and everyone in between. So, and Sadio Mane obviously on that list. But it did, again, it's like first reaction, it did kind of stop me in his tracks. He's played his best football in the Championship, so it was a bit of an odd one. And last thing on that, Nottingham Forest is 16th or 17th signing this summer, which is a lot. And I do remember Fulham doing the same a couple of years ago. I know Forest have probably bought better, but you would have said the same about Fulham.
Yeah, and the big concern when we did our preview show, my big concern with Forest is their success last year was hugely built on loanees. Jed Spence, you had the striker from Aston Villa whose name's gone out of my head at the minute. You'd Garner in midfield, you had a couple of others. Can't remember that Villa number 9, but he was on loan. Keenan Davis, the striker. And just when you have loan players and then you get promoted, you can't get them back. It's a huge difference. There's 3 or 4 players out of your starting team gone, and you have to recruit and you have to go again. And fairness, they had a big win. Listen, there's no shortage of money there. He's the Olympiacos owner as well. He looked like he was enjoying himself at the City Ground on Sunday afternoon. He was blessing himself every couple of minutes, making sure they got over the line. But it does feel like they're trying to do it. Look, if it's a success and Forest stay up, then they're, you get Morgan Gibbs White and a couple of other players in, and you can build again. But it does feel a little bit desperate, and it'll be one of the big things to watch this year, how Forest go. Because it's an interesting one. They got a crop of guys who've been there a number of years. Joe Worrell, Yates in midfield. I know McKenna and Steve Cook are there, big, more experienced players as well. Jack Colback. I must say, I do like the 2 signings they brought in from Huddersfield. Harry Toffolo, who was one of the standout left backs last year in the Championship. He was really impressive. He was involved in the goal. And Lewis O'Brien in midfield is kind of a similar to the mold of a Harrison Reid, who plays for Fulham, just gets around the pitch, does his job well. But it'd be a big season and a big end to the transfer window for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I think Dean Henderson will keep them up the same way he kept Sheffield United up. Well, sure, they ended up finishing way. They didn't even need to stay up there. They finished like 9th or 10th, but you get my point.
He's one of them, Dean Henderson. He's got that personality, similar to Aaron Ramsdale and that. He's got that personality that's infectious. And it's funny, their last keeper, Brice Samba, who was a huge player for them, he had the Dean Henderson. He was from the Dean Henderson mould. He was a complete headbanger. I actually would have loved to have seen him in the Premier League for a year, just because he would have been box office. But like I said, they have made a few really good signings. Forest, that striker up front looks a bit of a handful. But I think the big concern would be when they get around January, February time and the pressure comes on and they're playing the better sides. It'd just be, when they're playing a side like Brighton, how they go about it. But that'll be something to watch.
Finally, we'll leave it on. I don't know if you've had a chance. I haven't had a chance to watch any of the new Amazon Prime Arsenal documentary. Have you had a chance to watch? Is it 3? Is this the last 3? Or is there 3 more after this?
Yeah, I think it's the last 3. Now I haven't.
Yeah, because I know the Newcastle. Yeah. Thoughts on Arsenal in general? Then I think Mikel Arteta's come out of it well. I was a bit worried, particularly with a few of the clips, particularly the Anfield clip, which is, let's be honest, atrocious overall. Despite the fact you can see what he's trying to do. Your thoughts on it's hard not to get carried away with Arsenal. I think they're probably a centre mid away from realistically they could easily finish 3rd. They're probably in that race with Spurs and Chelsea. And if Liverpool drop off, you never know what can happen there. I just think City are way too far ahead of it, obviously. But Jesus, Zinchenko are 2 players that will probably outside of City maybe walk into any team. So and that documentary has probably helped, even though a lot of Arsenal fans would feared it. And I think even that clip of Arteta going mad after Newcastle is only endearing him to fans that we all know they care, but sometimes it's good to see him shout to the players the same way we all would have shouted to the players on that Monday night, because that Newcastle performance. I know we had our 2 reserve fullbacks in, but it was absolutely atrocious.
What I'd say about Jesus, the goal he gets, his first goal and his second goal. What I love about them, because I think it's well now, he hasn't. I don't think he scored in the Premier League from outside the box, but his first goal, the way he managed to find a half yard of space, and then I was more impressed with the second goal, his movement, and just to see an Arsenal striker score in the 6-yard box and score those kind of goals, having watched, that probably been the biggest area we've needed for the last 10 years, is so refreshing. I think, I just look at Jesus now and I'm thinking, with Liverpool's couple of injuries, God, if you had a front 3 of Diaz, Jesus and Salah, that probably gets close to winning the league, doesn't it? I know Liverpool are close at the moment, but Jesus, just his ability to play in any of the 3 positions in that front 3 is probably why Pep kept them for so long. It's probably why Pep used them for so long. And at City, he seemed to go on those runs where he'd play maybe 12 games in a row and really shine, and then you mightn't see him for another 6 or 7. But he is quite streaky like that, and he looks a really, really, really good sign. It looks like our best at the moment. Obviously, 2 games in,
yeah.
But it's been a long time since Arsenal bought a player in a position they really needed, and gone straight in as a starter. Because even say, for example, you look at the couple of goalkeepers we've signed recently. Leno was a good signing, but then he was playing second fiddle to Czech for ages. Same with Ramsdale with Leno. This is the first signing in a bit of a while. Partey probably included in it as well with Jesus, where I know Partey was kind of injured when he came, but Jesus has gone straight into the team and
not messing.
He's got a great new chant from the Arsenal fans. I was singing it earlier, and
I know the tune, but I still need to learn the lyrics. Yeah, but even there's the fan base is improving a lot, and there's connection with the team. And
well, put it this way, Dan: if you look at Man United, and I was, as I said, listening to Johnny Giles, listen to Johnny Giles talk about United is where Arsenal were in the Emery era. lads doing what they want, players on big wages thinking that the place out, disconnect between the fans and the players. Actually, one thing to note, I saw a video of Old Trafford of a couple of fans fighting in just amongst themselves, giving out, but it was an altercation, and that's what happened at Arsenal for a number of years at the end of Wenger, particularly end of Wenger, early Emery, where there was a civil war going on. There was arguments between fans, just toxic. The players couldn't handle the pressure. I think that's where United are at. You look at Harry Maguire and McTominay and Luke Shaw, and I know people say it, like, they probably aren't bad lads. They probably are lads that are trying behind the scenes, but their confidence is gone and they just can't handle the pressure.
Mm.
And what I say is, it's exactly where Arsenal were 4 years ago, and it takes an awful lot to get back. And the biggest problem that United have, more so than when Arsenal was there, the Arsenal fan didn't have the same level of resentment towards the owners as Manchester United do now, just on the basis of this has been over a longer period, and they've had issues with the Glazers in the past, and it's off the back of the Super League as well. So it's Monday night is going to be explosive one way or another, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you remember Mesut Ozil and the fights then, and the Mesut Ozil fanboys, and then the Aubameyang thing. Obviously, it was very recent, but there was a massive mess he inherited, and he didn't help himself. Arteta bringing in Willian. I suppose we're all human, and maybe he maybe looked at him as I know Willian's a right mid and a left mid as well, but he probably looked at him as he'll improve the team like Jesus has, and Willian will take us to this level, and then Jesus will take us to this level. Only Willian joined the Aubameyang and the Ozil crew after maybe 3 assists against Fulham on the opening day, which I saw a good comparison. Nunes also got a goal. Well, he got a goal and assist away to Fulham, and now he's singing out the place. But I'd hopeful he won't end up like Willian for Liverpool fans. But yeah, I do agree. And the comparison, I think I need to look at what Arteta has done, and fans, people outside Arsenal don't realise how much connection Arsenal fans have to the team that they didn't have, and I don't think fans particularly care if we're nowhere near first, second, or third, or if as long as we get fourth, or at the very least compete to it right to the death, like we did last season. And we have the squad now. We've improved those areas in full back. That there's probably no excuses, but it's just a connection with the team, which is everything, like you mentioned, the moments like when you were talking about the League of Ireland.
And final point on that, Dan, and I think Bukayo Saka perfectly is the symbol of where Arsenal have come in 3 years. So he made his debut. He started Mikel Arteta's first game. He's been the most used player, I think, in the Arteta era. He's he's a homegrown Arsenal fan. He's come through the club's academy. He's come through difficult moments with England, and he plays football with a smile on his face. But he's also unbelievable. He's endearing. He's probably wearing the club's most famous jersey, the number 7. If you're at the Emirates and you walk around, you see Rocastle, Brady, Pires, and now Saka took the jersey at a young age, and he's been probably our best player since he's come into the squad. And I think he perfectly symbols where Arteta and where Arsenal have come in 3 years. It mightn't feel like a lot in the table-wise, because you've got 2 of the best teams the Premier League maybe has ever seen. But Arsenal have come they've done a lot of the donkey work of what was a crumbling club to bit by bit build it again. And as I said, while an Arsenal fan, while Bukayo Saka is wearing the number 7 and he's going out at the Emirates Stadium week in, week out, you'll always get quite a sense of joy. And he is that kind of player.
Yeah, he's got the sort of graveyard shift this year, because you've got Zinchenko and Martinelli on the left, and you've got Ben White or Tomiyasu who'll tuck in, which means Saka's basically going to be on his own on that wing. So I don't think his stats outside the penalties will be amazing this year, but I'd say he'll be one of Arsenal's key players. But yeah, really looking forward to how the season goes overall. There's a bit of hope for everyone outside of United and Liverpool. But yeah, Monday night, the coverage starts at 6:30. Can you believe that? 6:30. Absolutely amazing. 6:30 kickoff, 30 minutes early. It's going to be Gary Neville, I think, or maybe Neville's commentating, but not 100%.
They can't have a Liverpool United game and not have Souness and Keane.
Yeah, so maybe they might do something different for this Monday Night Football or something. But yeah, you have to have Neville and Carragher commentating for sure, and that's Monday night, 8:00. We look forward to that. Busy Premier League weekend. Sean, any final thoughts on the weekend or anything before we go?
No, it's been obviously, as we mentioned earlier, a good week for Irish athletics, and looking forward to Liverpool United. I think that's gonna have everyone watching around the world, because it's, as I said, two of the biggest clubs, one of the biggest kind of rivalries historically, but also two clubs that can't afford to lose. Neither club can afford to lose that game. It's a must not lose for either side. So whoever wins it, like I said, if you're Ten Hag, you just got a picture walking down towards the Stretford end for the first time, showing some emotions and making the United fans believe. And I think that's what he'll be trying to do. But it's easier said than done.
With nobody in it, perhaps. Myself and Sean will be back. Thanks a million for listening to us. If you're listening on the pod, we'd really appreciate you leaving preferential preview wherever you listen to. Give us the follow. Hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, etc. And if you're watching on YouTube, do give us a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more. Plenty of exciting content to come over the coming weeks and months as the sport builds, particularly football, with the Premier League and all the way to a World Cup in Qatar in the middle of the season. But for now, for myself and Sean, take care and enjoy the weekend.